Hello, welcome to OLTK Overture. My name is Chris Turner, and in this tutorial series I'll be taking you through all of the main features of Orchestra Librarian's Toolkit. In our first episode, we'll look at how OLTK can help streamline the process of naming sets of PDF files. To start with, let's rename a folder full of scans of Beethoven's Second Symphony. I will drag the folder of files into the work area, and then the next thing I need to do is to input the instrumentation. In this case, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 0. Oops, 0. Temp strings. As we've done this, you will see that the file names have been generated based off of the instrumentation we've supplied, and also this instrumentation panel has been filled out. Now, if you are wondering how do I know whether the top file is indeed flute 1 and the second file is flute 2, so the first thing to note is that I have scanned in score order, and I have the file sort set to score order down here. So in most cases this will match up, but you can check by simply mousing over this. And in our case, I've actually got the violin 1 and violin 2 and viola, the strings are at the top. No matter. To fix this, I can simply drag these files down to the bottom. One at a time. And that should be my 5-string files down the bottom. So if I now mouse over this one, violin 1 matches up with violin 1 here, and viola matches up with viola here, and bass with bass. So you can check each file. I would often just do a sample. So that's your trumpet. So at the moment our renamed files are still grayed out, and that's because we have some required fields that we have not set. So in our case, and there you have it. So we've now got a set of file names, very simple ones. And if we press rename, they're now renamed. And you can see that if I go back into the folder that they came from, which was this scanner folder, that they've all been nicely renamed. So another scenario that we might face as librarians would be that we get in a set of parts from a composer, and often these will come in labelled as the instrument but nothing else, and with no kind of nice numerical order or anything on them. So here's an example of that. Now I'm also going to show you one of the other ways that we can do instrumentation. So in addition to inputting instrumentation here, or indeed in this instrumentation panel, we do also have some API integrations with both Daniels Orchestral Music Online and with ArtsVision. So I'm going to enable both of those so you can see what the interface looks like. So you can see here I'm searching with Daniels, or I can switch out to search with ArtsVision. So if we now do that, we'll see we could just pull down, and it's already pulled in all of the information for us, and we are good to go. Now notice still that we have our instruments in a kind of alphabetical order, and that our file names are in score order. So if I do this, we'll end up naming the violin 2-part double bass, which is not ideal. We do also have this file sort alphabetical, and having pressed that, you'll see that in this panel the new file names are now sorted by alphabetical order, and that's a much better match here for what we see. You may still need to tweak one or two things like coronglays becoming English horns can move them in the alphabetical order, but in this case this is a relatively simple example, and as such it's reasonably straightforward. So we can hit rename and we're done. We also have these quick instrumentation buttons. So these are really useful when you have a particular instrumentation that you want to recall quite often. So you might find yourself scanning a string set and you can just hit that. I'll put it back into score order because I prefer looking at it like that. But you can also create customized ones of these. So I'll show you how this works now. Let's say we want a Baroque orchestra. So I can press the add button here and it will generate a new one for me. I can change the icon to something more Baroque, maybe a lute. And for our Baroque orchestra, let's have 2 flutes, 2 oboes, no clarinets, 1 bassoon. Let's make it 2 trumpets, 2 horns, no trombones, no tubas, 1 percussionist, 1 harpsichord, and strings. And if I now press save, you'll see I have a new button for Baroque orchestra, and if I press that, it recalls my Baroque orchestra instrumentation. So this is really useful particularly for pops shows where you might have 20 charts with the same instrumentation, or maybe movie soundtrack recordings where you have a lot of cues with the same instrumentation. Quite helpful. Additionally, we have filters on this page. So if you wanted to just work with the wind and brass, or the woodwind rather, for this, then you can filter to woodwind or you can filter to brass. You have good flexibility. There's also a WBP filter which gives you all the wind, brass, percussion, and keyboard and guitar instruments. You also have a lot of freedom with how you customize how these file names look. So we've started with a relatively simple example. If I go into settings, and I'll be in the file names tab by default, you see that we have a lot of flexibility with how we do this. So in this case I've only had available the composer's last name, but let's say I wanted to also add in composer's first name. Very easy to do. And you can see the examples of what this will look like in each scenario. So we can cater for scenarios with both arranger and orchestrator, just arranger, and neither. I might also want to add in an addition field. So if I click on one of these, when I click on this to add it, it will add it after it. Similarly with the punctuation. We also have several different ways of numbering parts. In our case we have what we're calling the section within orchestra number, and that's defined here in the sections tab with this section number column. So you can see a flute is section 5, etc. Then we have this player within section number, so that just counts how many clarinet players in this case we have. So this is the 3rd clarinet part. We can also change our approach entirely and use instead player within orchestra number. And player within orchestra number simply counts the number of players in the orchestra that have had files generated for them. Note this is really a part count. It won't count strings as being multiple players. We've also been working currently using part abbreviations, so you'll see we've got CL3 and BCL. And change this to part instruments, and now I've got these written out in a more full form. We also had Roman numerals turned on. I can turn those off. I can change the padding options for any of these numbers, whether they should be padded with a 0. It is useful to have the 0 padding turned on, as it enables better sorting within Windows File Manager. Additionally, you can change the text that shows for this, what we call the R label and the Orc label, so they are arranged by your arranger's name. You can also change what your doubling text is. So you can make it display like this. You can also change what the separator is between those so that it looks like it's spaces instead of text. If I now move back to part abbreviations, a question that comes up sometimes is, what if I want to change these abbreviations? So currently we use CL for clarinet and BCL for bass clarinet. Now these can be changed in a couple of different places. So the first is for the bass clarinet, we will go into here and we will find the bass clarinet and we press the edit button, and you'll see we have 2 abbreviations we've added in here. Now I can add more, so I could call it B Clar, for example. In my case, I just want to change what's displayed, and in order to do that you need to set the default abbreviation. This works the same with names, so if you have an instrument like a cor anglais, which could also be called an English horn, you can have both of them here, but you can choose the one that you prefer. Great, so we've chosen BCLT. I'm going to do the same with my B flat clarinet. Now in itself, this is not sufficient to change the name of the clarinet in the previous screen. And this is because it is generated from a number 3 in our Daniels orchestration code. That in itself is not enough information to imply instrument, and so we look to the section that it's in to go, oh, this is a clarinet. So if you go back to the Sections tab and you go into Edit, you will see firstly that there is a default abbreviation for clarinet, which is CL. That can't be changed, that's just a default. But what you can do is you can give the clarinet a default instrument. So if I choose this to be clarinet, you'll see we now have this. This will then take the abbreviation I previously set up for clarinet in this instruments panel. Going back to the file naming tab, if I now put a full orchestra's worth of musicians in, and you will see that our clarinets are now showing with our nice CLT1, CLT2, and our bass clarinet with BCLT. Finally, let's look at how you can customize instrument doublings. In this case, we have a first flute, a second flute, and a piccolo. Let's say I would like my second flute to double alto flute. I can insert the double like so. You'll notice this is standard Daniels orchestration code. and the result gives you a flute 2 doubling alto flute. You could also do more complex doubles for things like reed books. So in this case, let's say we wanted to have one clarinet doubling an alto saxophone, doubling a bassoon, doubling a bass clarinet. That is possible. If you wanted a little bit more customization, like to say clarinet 1 doubling alto sax 2 doubling bassoon 4, doubling bass clarinet, that is also possible. You can also name your instruments manually in this box. For example, if I wanted these 2 violin parts to be called violin 1 and 2, oops, violin 3, then I can do that. As you see here, I have violin 1, 2 and violin 3. One other useful feature is the overdub feature. So for movie scores you may sometimes have several versions of violin 1 that are recorded on several passes. So in this case let's increase this up to 4 violin parts, and we will have one OD for overdub, and then one OD2, and you will see that we have got those. This is still red because we haven't filled out everything yet, and we could do, if you want to use the violin 2 and violin 2 overdub 1, you can use that methodology as well. This OD is set in our file settings under the overdub abbreviation and can be really anything you would like, as long as it doesn't clash with an instrument abbreviation in the instruments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.